We are in Nefesh Hachaim, Shaar Daled Perek Yud Beis. I'd like to explain something here which is very deep but very real. So the Nefesh Hachaim said here, it's talking about Chidushei Torah and how that becomes, you become a chelek of the Bria with Chidushei Torah. This first paragraph, Kol Shekein Chidushin Amitim D'Oraisa, Emes HaChidush in Torah, the Mischatchen Al Yidei Adam, Ein Aroich L'Godol Neirois Niflois Inyana Mapula Lamala. We have no idea of how, when one speaks Divrei Torah, which are Chidushim, what that does in the Shamayim. We have no idea. He's right. Ein Aroich. Shekol Mila V'Mila, because every single word. Now, what's important to be medayik here is not every single thought, but every single word, hamispratis, hamischadeshes b'fi ha'adam, that comes out as a chiddush from the mouth of a person. So again, we're talking about words. I mentioned this last time, but I didn't. I don't want to be. Every word that comes out of the mouth, there's an emphasis here on speaking. Kuchabrichu, what happens to that word of Torah? HaKadosh Baruch Hu nashik la uma'atir la. HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes the word and he kisses it. V'nivna, and he crowns it. V'nivna mimeno olam chadash bifnei atzma, and creates a whole new world. V'hein hein, and this is what it says at the end of Yeshayahu, Shamayim chadoshim va'oretz hachadosha. So we spoke about the union of Olamais and what does it mean to create Olamais. That's what I spoke about on Sunday. Don't want to go over it again. And just a few lines further in the Zohar, HaZohar, Daf Daled Amud Beis, Rabbi Shimon Pasach, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said, V'asim dvarai b'ficha. Hashem said, Yeshayahu, through Yeshayahu, I am putting my words in your mouth. Kamadi Isla Barnash Lishtadla B'Raisi Imam V'Layla, that when a person is mishtadel in Torah day and night. Begin to kuchabrichu tzayis the kolan. HaKadosh Baruch Hu at that time listens to our voice. To idon the misaski baraisa of those that are learning Torah. Ubechol mila dis chadish baraisa. And if you say a good chiddush in Torah, al yada, this is the lashon of Zohar, dahu mishtadel baraisa, because of the person behind that word who's being mishtadel in Torah. Avid rakia chadi makes a new rakia. Snan, we learned, said Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, Bahu Shaita de Mila Dairaisa Ischadish Mipuma de Barnash, that at the very moment that a person is mischadish a word of Torah and says it, he Mila Dahahi Mila Salka, that word goes up, Vishadas Kamei de Kuchabrichu, and it stands in front of Hashem. The Kuchabrichu Natil Lahu Mila, Kodesh Baruch Hu takes that word, Nashakla, and he kisses the word, and he crowns it b'shivan itrin galifin u'machalkukin, with 70 crowns, and eternally machalkukin means he eternally engraves it into the Torah. So it's all very beautiful, but I'm just trying to get a little bit of a hasaga of what it means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes each word, makes a whole rakia out of it, a whole olam chadash, and that we spoke about last time. But what can it possibly mean that the word stands there and HaKadosh Baruch Hu kisses it and gives it a crown? What is the union of a neshika of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? This might not be something that you think about very often, nor do I, but it's good to think about. What is this neshika from HaKadosh Baruch Hu? A kiss from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the first thing that I want to understand, just 1 second, sorry. The first thing that I want to understand is creating a new world. So that we spoke about, I just want to review that what happens is, excuse me, that the whole world is created by Dibur. Asar mamaris nivra olam. Vayomer, 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 vayomer. So Dibur is where the, so to speak, the hidden part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Nelam, comes out, articulates itself in a word, in a world. And the same thing is when we speak. By the way, Bein L'Tov, Bein L'Ra. So when we speak, we're taking something from deep inside, hopefully, and we're bringing it out. And this is the Brias Ha'olam. That's the pshat of Bria, meaning from the moment that HaKadosh Baruch Hu blew into our nostrils and we became people, speaking people, from that moment on, we became shutfim in the Brias Ha'olam. And the way we create is not so much with our hands, interestingly, because what we create with our hands is here today, gone tomorrow. But when we become a shutf in the Ma'aseh Bereishis, it means with Dibur. It's interesting, we were talking in the morning halachas, for those of you that are there, listen. We're talking about the power of speech in terms of bad things, like you're not allowed to give a klala, use nivel peh, to swear, to use foul language, even to use lashon maguna, tameh instead of an emna ta'ira. So those things have a koach. They have a koach. And Kal v'chomer, when we give bracha, we have a koach. I was going to say that it comes from, I'll show you inside, but it comes from Vayipach ba'apav nishmas chaim. Hashem gave us the koach dibur. He means He gave us the koach to create with our dibur. But it also was mitzamtzem until Avram Avinu, where Hashem said to Avram Avinu, "Umvarechecha baruch va'archa or," that those who you bless will be blessed, those who you curse will be cursed. Hayei bracha. Hayei bracha means, like we learned in the Nefesh Hachaim, Shaar Aleph and Shaar Beis, the bracha is an outflowing, an outpouring of the inside to the outside. Avram Avinu, you're mamish, my partner, in the Ma'aseh Bereishis, and that's true of all the Jewish people. So you got to watch what you say. I just want to read to you. The Gemara says, that's in my 2 minutes in the morning. I didn't have time to elaborate. The Gemara is in by Cotton Yud Ches Amud Aleph. Just tell you a story from the Gemara. The Gemara says, Pinchas, not the Pinchas of Bamidbar, but Pinchas, a guy by the name of Pinchas, Rabbi Pinchas. Pinchas Achua Demar Shmuel. Who is Pinchas? To my knowledge, he's not brought in Shas, but he was the brother of Shmuel, like Rav and Shmuel. So the brother of Shmuel is Pinchas. And Isra ba Milsa, Rashi says, he was sitting Shiva. And here you see, by the way, how careful Chazal are. Isra ba Milsa, Epis Gishen. Ayel Shmuel, and Shmuel came, his brother, L'mishal Taiba Minei, to be Menachem Oval. Rashi says, O L'gadbei L'daber al Lipai. He came to the Oval to speak, not to his heart, comfort him. Tied into this, I'm sure, is, we have to figure it out, I'm sure the halacha that when you go into a Beis HaOvel, to be Menachem Oval, you always got to let the Oval speak first. You're not supposed to speak before the Oval. Even if you say, I've seen tzaddikim go into a Beis HaOvel, and they'll sit there for 5-10 minutes, they won't say a word until the Oval says something. Something going on there. Like, what's the problem? There's something going on there. So the Gemara says, Chaznu Shmuel, the famous Tana, Rav and Shmuel, Shmuel saw his brother L'tufrei dahavin efishin. He saw that his nails were very long, because a novel doesn't cut their nails. Amarle, so Shmuel says to him, to his brother Pinchas, Amai loy shakalta lahu, why didn't you cut your nails? Did anybody ever say that when they Got to be menachma. Amay lo shekalta lahu. Amarle, so Pinchas said to Shmuel, Ilu b'didei haver, if you would be sitting shiva, mi have mezalzel b'kulai. Would I have the nerve to say such a thing? Would anybody have the nerve to say such a thing? Habai, and this was, says the Gemara, Kishgaga sheyoitza milifnei hashalit. Pinchas, brother Pinchas, said a word, and it was like a word that the Karnish Gemeint. It was a conversation, two brothers. Kishgaga sheyoitza milifnei hashalit. Be'isrei be'milsa b'Shmuel. And the next thing you know, Shmuel himself was sitting shiva. He became an awful. Rashi says, by the way, Kishgaga sheyoitza mipi hashalit. It's a case like Shegazer Hashalit is very important for our learning. Shegazer Hashalit Gzeira al Adam Shaloi Bekavana Lahargai. So let's say a king says accidentally that this guy is Chayav Misa, or he needs to be arrested. Even if it's not true, the king can't take it back necessarily. You see this by Achashverosh and by Esther. Once I say something, I can't take it back. That's the din of a malchus. And it's interesting, the comparison the Gemara makes between Shmuel saying a sarcastic word or whatever it was to his brother retorting with a very, very hidden curse. The Yisrei Milsa b'Shmuel, and all of a sudden Shmuel sitting shiva, says the Gemara. Ayo Pinchas, so Pinchas Achua, the brother, came Lemishal Taimamine to go be Menachem Avel, his brother Shmuel. Story continues. Shakolina lo Tufre. So he took his nails and Chavtinu la'ape, and he threw it in his face. I'm not clear who threw what to who, but I think Shmuel got upset with his brother. Amrle, and he said to him, Leislach, don't you know, bris krusa l'svasayim, that there's a special bris. A bris. What's a bris? Rabbi said, what's a bris? Bris krusa l'svasayim. A bris is a...
It's a contract. Covenant agreement.
Yeah. So there's some kind of an agreement between Hashem and Adam that what you speak, I have to listen. I listen to what you talk. Bris krusa l'svasayim. How do I know that? Don't you know that? He says to his brother Pinchas, don't you know anything? D'amar Rabbi Yochanan, because Rabbi Yochanan said, Rabbi Yochanan was the Rebbe of both of them. And this is the Amira of Rabbi Yochanan. Maybe he wasn't. D'amar Rabbi Yochanan, minayin shebris krusa l'svasayim. How do we know that bris krusa l'svasayim, that what a person speaks is going to be mekuyim? Shnemar vayomer Avraham el Na'arav, because we see that Avram said to his tendi, what do they call? Those that were tending to him, el Na'arav, which was, by the way, Eliezer and Yishmael. He said to them, by the Akedah, Shvu lachem poi ima chamor, you stay here with the chamor, va'ani va'anar nelcha ad koi, I'm going to go with Yitzchak ad koi, until the Makam Kodesh, koi. V'nishtachave v'nashuva aleichem, we're going to do a hashtachava to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that was of course the Makam in the Beis HaMikdash. V'nashuva aleichem, and then we'll come back. Now, why are they coming back? He's going to kill Yitzchak. It's going to be Makarim as a korban. Who's coming back? But since he said these words, V'nashuva aleichem, he created a reality that he and Yitzchak are coming back. So it was a gather of possibly Niva ve'enu yedea man Niva. But the point was not that he saw the future or predicted the future. or he even accidentally called the future, but the words of Avram Avinu, "Va'avarechecha baruch," or who you curse will be accursed. Avram Avinu, the power of his speech is not that he was able to see the future; he made the future, created it. Vistaya Milsa, says the Gemara, and you see what happened. Hadaru Tarvayu, and they both came back. So let's take heart about that. We have to be so careful about what we say, but it still doesn't explain why. Now, Tosfos here in Moed Katan Yud Ches asked the Kasha, what are you quoting, Rabbi Yochanan? Bris Crucilis Vasayim. We have an old klal, older than Rabbi Yochanan, before Rabbi Yochanan was born. We have a klal of Al Tiftach Pel L'Satan. So Tosfos is understanding in his Kasha that it's the same thing. In other words, Al Tiftach Pel L'Satan, that if we say, see how careful tzaddikim are in this, how careful we have to be. You don't say to somebody, well, maybe you have cancer, you should check that out. Maybe you're suffering with corona, you're going to die. Lo medabrim kach, because bris krusal is fasayim. You don't say the word. When you create a word, this is a Jewish thing. I don't believe anybody else has this kind of an idea. You're taking something and you're bringing it into the world. Reb Nachman said, Reb Nachman Breslover said he was against going to doctors a little bit. So he said, I saw this in one of the Igros, he says, the worst part about going to a doctor, he's talking about betachen, have betachen, so we don't hold like that. I'm not a Breslover, I don't hold that. But he said the worst part about going to a doctor is the diagnosis. Because the doctor says, maybe you have this, maybe you have cancer, maybe you're, it's always a sakana. It's a very difficult thing, but that's what we learned. The name of this, so Tosfos asks, and if you look here, maybe it's not for now, but the Marsha has a long arichas to try to answer Tosfos' kasha. What's the difference between the concept of bris crucilis vasayim and the concept of al tiftach pel l'satan? Seems like the same thing, Tosfos says. And the Marsha says, no, it's not the same thing. He answers Tosfos' kasha. Makes a difference between midah toiva, midah merupa, midah ra, rather. Okay, I don't want to get into it. What I do want to understand is, what does it mean, bris crucilis vasayim? There's a special bris with the lips. We know about bris milah, we know about bris Sinai, we know about bris bein absarim, bris moyav. What is the bris crucilis vasayim, which Rabbi Yochanan Ersht was the first one to be machadish? Bris crucilis vasayim. Don't you know, leislacha? Don't you know that you're not supposed to talk that way? That a word, or to put it in my language, that somehow or another a word, not everything you think you have to say, because a word can become a reality.
The behavior?
Yeah.
Rob? Ask a question on what Robert said just now about speaking.
I don't hear you, I'm sorry.
I have this feeling that, hello? You hear me now?
Go ahead.
Hear me now?
Better?
No, so my question is it only speaking? If I have something on my mind, I think of something in my mind, sometimes I feel that just by thinking of something, it could bring about something. That means, it's like say Ayin Hara, somebody give it Ayin Hara. So is it actually, so I think even if I was think something or see something, the speech does support that speech, or the idea that something goes in the machshava.
So read this week's parsha. The Bilam was full of Ayin Hara, but nothing would have been chal until he said it, dibur. And what's clear is that the big ness of Bilam was apparently Yudea Das Elyon, he could have spoken about the Jewish people, and that would have been tragic. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mahapach to bracha. Matoivu alecha Yaakov mishkanesecha Yisrael. So you have here a clear raya from Bilam, the whole story of Bilam, that's totally in Dibur. And he was Keneged Avram Avinu because his Dibur was driven by Ayin Hara. But the Ayin Hara mitzaratzma apparently doesn't come out so bad unless it's actually a klala. So you see there's two dinim in Yaakov, you see there's two dinim in Bilam. There's a din of Ayin Hara from the Machshava, and it came out to Dibur, and what he was trying to do is create a new reality for the Jewish people, which would have been annihilation. I want to show you something. I have it on my screen. May I share my screen with you? Can you see that? Here, this is what you're looking at, the Sefer Achinuch Reish Lamed Aleph. And the Sefer Achinuch is talking about the mitzvah of Reish Lamed Aleph, Shloi Lekalel Echon Ben Yisrael Ben Ish Ben Isha. You're not allowed to curse somebody. So he says here at the end of the first paragraph, what's the problem with cursing people? Like why? Like who cares? Loisakal Cheresh, he explains, just agav while we're here. Loisakal Cheresh doesn't mean that you shouldn't curse somebody who's deaf. It means you shouldn't curse somebody even if they're not listening, even if they can't hear you. That's what Loisakal Cheresh means. You know, so if you're sitting in your house and you're upset and you say, "Damn this guy," like he's, you know, that's cursing somebody who doesn't hear you. Big avera, big lav, to curse somebody. But more than a lav, I mean, not more than a lav, besides for the lav, it's actually effective. It actually works. Now that we know this, the shorish in this mitzvah, shenimnu Hashem mehazik befinu. Hashem held us back, told us not to be mazik people with our mouths, l'zuasenu, k'may shenimnu mehazik lahem b'maisa. Just like you're not allowed to take a hammer and break somebody's windshield, you're not allowed to talk. Talk is also mazik. And so a tremendous chiddush that loisakalo cheresh has a din of nazikin. It's interesting in halach it's called the lav shein boy maisa, but it's a din of nazikin. Okay, Indian zel amur zichronim levracha, and this is the Gemara I just quoted you. Bris krusel l'svasayim, the story of Pinchas and Shmuel. Kolaymar sheyesh koyach b'divrei pi ha'adam. There's a koyach in the pen. Ve'efshir lanu loymar. Now, give me your full attention here. Ve'efshir lanu loymar l'fia anius datenu. This is his own svara. Ki behei yois hanefesh hamdaber sheba'adam chelak el yoini. Since the fact is that the nefesh hamdaber is a person who can speak, as opposed to a cow. A person who could speak is the part of us that could speak is chelak el yoini. It's our neshama. K'may shamru, k'may vayipach ba'apav nishmas chayim. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu blew into our nostrils and neshama. B'tir game, and the Targum Unkla says, famously, l'ruach memalala gives us the ability to speak. It's the neshama. Nasan ba Hashem gave in that koach hadibur koyach rav lifol afilu b'amesh shehu chutz mimena. We can walk around and do things, create things, make things happen, even if it's outside of ourselves. Like that you could do something bad to yourself psychologically is one thing. But that you can do something bad to somebody else, that's a Valkein Yadanu. And therefore we know, Venira Tamid. And we see this all the time. Kilafi Chashivus Nefesh Adam Udvekusa Bel Yoinim. That the more tzaddik a person is, and the more he's attached to Hashem, Kenefesh HaTzadikim VaChasidim, as is the case with Tzadikim and Chasidim, Yimaru Divreihem Lifol, what they say will happen quickly. Lifol B'chol Mashi Yadabru Elav. Don't underestimate the words of a tzaddik. Zadavar Yadua o Mefursem Ben Yoidei Das Umevine Mada. Those that know this, those that know this. Be'ef Shalom Ha'oid. And it's also possible to say, Ki ha'inyan lahashbis riv bein b'nei adam liyos b'neiim shalom. You could also say the pshat and not to curse is to try to make peace between people. That's the Rambam's, what we would expect from the Rambam, rationalist approach. But the Chinuch says that the approach here, the pshat here, is that when you curse, you're hurting somebody. Now, if you're a big tzaddik and you're cursing, so you're doing even more. If you're, but anybody has this power. This is the power. Anybody that could speak has this power because once you have the neshama, you have a koach hapeh. You have a koach hapeh. Good. Everybody with me so far? That's dibur. What's neshika? Agav, just even before we get to the neshika part, I was saying in the Chumash, Miriam was talking about Moshe in Parshas Ba'aloscha. And Hashem gave her Musar and he said, Lo kein avdi Moshe. What are you talking about Moshe? He's a fantastic Navi. Lo kein avdi Moshe. B'chol beis hinemonhu. Peh el peh adaber boy. Famous pasuk. I speak to him mouth to mouth. So what's the peh el peh? Who speaks to somebody mouth to mouth? Atei oznecho shma. You speak to somebody in their ear. Peh eloizen adaber boy. What's the Indian of speaking to somebody to their mouth? Peh el peh, artificial resuscitation.
I always thought it meant a conversation. Like peh el peh means it's a back and forth. It's a little not study.
But that's not what it means. I'm speaking my peh, speaking to his peh. Peh el peh.
Right, understood. But okay.
It's not peh im peh. I'm speaking to him, he's speaking to me. Peh el peh, adaber boy.
It doesn't say nidaber also. Okay.
It's interesting, like Rashi says, what was the whole time of Miriam that he was Parish Mina Isha? So Rashi says, Peh Peh, Amarti loy lifresh Mina Isha. I told him to do that. Peh Peh daber boy. Amarti loy lifresh Mina Isha, which is a Pella because the Gemara says Mefurish that there were three things that Moshe Rabbeinu was machadish by himself, and one of them was to be Parish Mina Isha. The Sifsei Chacham asked the question. So Taisus asked the question. You promise. Shloisha dvarim asam Moshe midaitai behiskim HaKadosh Baruch Hu imoy ve'echad mehem shepirish mina isha mashon shloit tziva lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But okay, so like when we were Makabel the Torah to Har Sinai, HaKadosh Baruch Hu told everyone to be parish mina isha, right? So Moshe Rabbeinu continued to be Makabel the Torah. He was Makabel the Torah the whole time, so he's parish mina isha. So maybe we could be Matar's Taisus' question by saying that he didn't have an explicit din to be parish mina isha, but he felt that Kolzman, that he was being Makabel the Torah, even in the Oil Moyed, so I have to be parish mina isha. But this all goes into the words peh el peh adaber boy. So the Or HaChaim HaKadosh says, Diktek loimer el peh v'loy la'oizen. Says pel peh, not pel oizen, which would have been more natural. Hamaskil advar navi. Shamar leiv shomeya. That's what it usually says when a navi has a nevuah. It says that he has a leiv shomeya. But zu, this pel peh, he had dragas nevuah she'en l'mala bimena. It's the highest level of nevuah. Sheikshar Hashem nefesh navi b'makar hanmenabe. B'yishal shal nevuah pel pel b'zeh kein tovin oimrei adaber boy v'loyomer itoi ela imo o imo ela boy. So it means pel pel means, says the Or HaChaim, that it's not that Hashem spoke to Moshe. And Moshe then spoke it out. Because once I hear something and then I'm saying it, that level of nevuah, like all the neviim, there's room for, not there is room, there is interference. You know, even if you're speaking to somebody, Pel, Loisen, we hear what we hear. Not only subjectively, but we hear what we hear. I know, you know, there's all kinds of sounds, there's waves. I'm not necessarily hearing your voice the same way you're hearing, you know, like everybody says they can't stand to hear themselves on a recording. But you know what? That's the way they sound. So Moshe Rabbeinu didn't hear through his ear. There was an implant there called the neshama, and he didn't hear through his ears. HaKadosh Baruch Hu became one with him. Peh, Hashem's peh, became Moshe Rabbeinu's peh. Peh el peh adaber boy. Not imai, not itoi, boy. Hashem's voice came through him. There was no interference at all. He was an instrument of Hashem in terms of speaking. So that's what the Or Chaim says. We can darshan in Rashi also, but I just want to I have a couple minutes. I just want to try to explain something. What we have here so far, let's not lose track. What we have here so far is the unbelievable koach of Dibor. And Moshe Rabbeinu, when he was saying Torah, Hel Peh Daber Boy, in other words, why did Hashem just say it? Which was what he was supposed to do. Like we would all get this nevuah. But what happened was that what Moshe Rabbeinu was saying, why did it have to go through the Peshel Moshe Rabbeinu? Because he was creating a whole new reality in the world by speaking it. Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe Lemar. How did the Rebbe teach it? Azoy tzuzagin. This is what you have to say. Lemar. The lemar is if it doesn't say lemar, bal toimar, don't say it. Sometimes Hashem spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu, it doesn't say lemar. Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't allowed to say it. We don't know what Hashem said to Moshe. Maybe he said to him a lot of things. But when he said lemar, he has to say it, and he has to say it exactly like this. Let me just show you something fascinating, and maybe we'll continue with this. Shir Hashirim, Pasuk Aleph, is what? Go ahead, Yoni.
Shir Hashirim Asher Shlomo.
Very good. Pasuk Beis, Yishakeni min shikais pi ki tovim doidecha meyayin. Right? Yishakeni. Remember, we started with the Nefesh Hachaim says that when a person says a dibur of divrei Torah, Kadosh Baruch Hu's menashek this word. Kam Shlomo HaMelech, he says Yishakeni min shikais pihu. Nashikais is two. Nashikais like pihu. What does pihu mean, by the way? Who knows Hebrew?
Mouth.
Who? Don't say mouth.
His mouth.
So what does pihu mean? Maza piv, maza pihu. What's piha? Her mouth. Give me some feedback here. So piv is his mouth, pia is her mouth, and pihu. So Rashi says, Yishakeni, listen to this. Rashi, Yishakeni min shikais pihu, Zokt Rashi, Kamoy shenoishek hachosan lahakala. Peh el peh. This is all too romantic for any of you. I excuse you early. K'moshe noishek hachasan lahakala. Peh el peh. I'll just tell you something quick that my son Rabbi Sender, Rav in Norfolk, Virginia. So So Baruch Hashem, he's B'li Ayin Hara, he's a walking Kiddush Hashem, and somebody had a kesher with, I think, a mailman, or I don't know what it was. He was getting married, and he asked Rabbi Sender if he can marry them. Two goyim. So, okay. So he said to me, he calls me, he says, okay, now what? How do I mean, he's licensed to marry somebody, marry two people, but how do you marry two goyim? You don't say Harayam HaKudeshesli, you don't say a bracha, what do you do? So I told him there's a nusach, I've done it a number of times. There's a nusach from the government, you're allowed to change a little bit, but basically that's the nusach you use, and you exchange vows. So we talked about the ksois and the nesivos, whether there's an isser of neder by a guy. The Catholic Church held for so many years that you can't exchange vows. Once you exchange vows, then you can't get a get. You're not allowed to get it. There's no instrument to be mater neder. Only Jews can be mater neder, etc. A whole thing to do. So anyway, so we're reading the nusach. You download it online, and do you promise to, until death do us part? You can't be meichel this neder. Anyways, at the end of the whole ceremony, he says, the nusach says, you may now kiss the bride. So Sender tells me, I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say that. That's not going to happen. So I told him, Sender, that's the best part. So, you may now kiss the bride. Mashma, that before that, you may not kiss the bride. That's the only relic of decency that's left. That all of a sudden, under this wedding canopy, you may now kiss the bride. So I said it's a beautiful thing, and also, not that we do this under our chuppahs, but the neshika can neshikas chasan v'kala. I presume Rashi's taking us all the way to the yichud room, but it's Keneshikas Chasan B'Kala. That's Yishakenim and Shikas Piyut. Now listen to this. That's my story for the day. Anyways, they got married. Mazel tov. Kan Kosev. Now listen to this. Says the Gra. Kol Makoim Shekasu Bivav Hulashon Zachar. We know that when a word ends with a vav, ito, imo, right? Mashlomo, it's always talking about a zachar. When a word ends with a hey, it's always talking about nekeva. Mashloma, ma'ita. So a vav, this by the way is already from the Sefer HaYetzirah. That's where that comes from. Sefer HaYetzirah talks about all the oisius of the aleph beis and tells us that a vav is zachar and a hey is nekeva. Kabbalistically, even in the Tzuras Hadvarim. So says the Gaon, Kol makom shekasu b'vav hu lashon zachar, ha-hey hu lashon nekeva, kiyadua. V'kan ksiv pi hu. How the Gaon know how to learn, Rashi. Kan ksiv pi hu zachar u nekeva b'yachad. V'zel kavanas Rashi kechasan al kala pe el pe. Ki toivim dodecha miyayin. See the Pirush of the Gra, yesh makoim shenoishkin al gav hayad. Sometimes you kiss somebody's hand. Val kasef. Achani said Shlomo Melech miskotekes liyos noig imi keminag arishen kechasen al kala el pe. So there's a lot to say about this, and there's a lot we don't understand. But let me just say this quickly: that Moshe Rabbeinu, his nevuah was pe el pe. So pe el pe is keneshikas chasen v'kala. Which, what Kabbalistically speaking, you may now kiss the bride. which, by the way, in the new nuschais of Justice of the Peace, changed to you may now kiss each other. Because Black Lives Matter. But, okay, we don't have to be infallible in that because we're talking about very holy things here. That there's a chibur between a chassan and kala, benefesh, nafshi kshura benafshay. There is a chelik of kesher between a chassan and kala, which is ruach piv usifasav. Remember the lashon of the Gemara in Moed Katan, bris krusa le sfasayim. Somebody smart on the air here will tell me, what does the tongue contribute to the talk? What does the voice box contribute? What does the lips contribute? But bris krusa le sfasayim, I presume the articulation. A neshika, the chassan and kala, is different than the intimacy between a chassan and kala because that's the chelak hamaisa. So what we're doing here, chassan and kala, is you're creating a new neshama, both benefesh under the chuppah, Areya Mekudeshes Li Kedas Moshe Yisrael, and beneshika, which is that's the nefesh, and then neshika, which is the ruach, and then lamaisa, which is nefesh ruach nesham, nefesh ruach nesham. The neshika is the kesher and nesham. I'm saying this here. I'm not gonna say it under any chuppah anytime soon. But that's what neshika is. So when Shlomo Melech said Yishakeni, in shika is pihu. So the guy is medayik pihu is gam zacher v'gam nekeva. So there was a complete sharing in order to create bepeh a davar chadash legamri, which is Torah. Whether it's a new neshama or whether it's Torah, that's the neshikas chassan v'kala, and that's the dimyan to let's come around to where we started. That's the comparison to chidushei Torah. So Chidush Torah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what did the Nefesh Hachaim say here? Or the Zohar, for that matter? You say a word of Torah, let's go back to where we started. Ve'is ad tadas kamei. That word of Torah stands in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Is ad tadas kamei de kutshabrichu, ve'kutshabrichu notel lahu mila v'noshakla. V'noshakla. So it means right now, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we're saying Chidush Torah, this, by the way, instantaneous. So not only are we borei things, which the Sefer HaChinuch taught us, bris krusalos vasayim, but we have to know that when we're using our koyach hadibur, particularly for Torah, so this is actually, you're being the mouthpiece of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Peh el peh.
It's 10 o'clock.
Adaber by. And this is true with klala, and this is true with bracha. And wherever we go, we have to spread bracha. And this is the side of the Kabul Kol Adam Sever Panim Yafais. And always say Shalom, having maktim Shalom L'chol Adam. Because Shalom is a bracha that we could do. Shalom Aleichem is a bracha that we could do. Think about the word Shalom Aleichem, unbelievable. Shalom Aleichem. Let me tell you one little Torah before we go. Yeah, if you have a minute, if you don't, you can go. But maktim shalom l'chol adam, a person has to always give shalom, and except on Shabbos. On Shabbos we say good Shabbos, because every time you say good Shabbos, you're yotzei kiddush hayom. Kaddish as hayom b'dvar. So what happened to the halacha of being maktim shalom l'chol adam? So came Rav Kook, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, the tzaddik genius. And he said, let's start a new thing and say Shabbat Shalom. So we're B'Kaddish Yom, and we're also giving the bracha of Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, yeah. Okay, so a lot to think about here. Rabbi said, I am going to be away. I apologize for these things, but it's hard these days. I'm going to be away Sunday. Shabbat Shalom Omevarach.
Thank you, Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you so much, Rabbi.
Thank you very much.